I'm going to climb Cradle Mountain this morning.
To recap my Tasmanian vlog so far, we landed in Hobart, jumped on a trampoline, wandered around the Mona Museum, opened up some Pokemon cards, jetted out on a speedboat to see the Southern Ocean up close, stopped by the Port Arthur convict settlement, had some beer, some cocktails, did a self-tape audition in the hotel, and finally drove north to Cradle Mountain.
So this is the view from our lodge. Cradle Mountain is somewhere yonder. I don't actually think it's in the thing. But anyway, today we will be doing the Cradle Mountain hike from bottom to the top, and we're doing it in shorts and a t-shirt.
This was the biggest day of the trip. After getting the bus a little bit closer to the mountain, we had to clean our shoes, disinfect them to prevent any contaminants that might have stuck around from previous journeys. It is such a beautiful spot of nature, so it is really important to take care of it so it can be enjoyed well into the future. Committed to the challenge of wearing merely shorts and a t-shirt, the early morning chill was absolutely brutal. This tunnel in the visitor center was particularly cold, but my mate told me we'd be fine once we started moving, and I'm not one to chicken out this early into a challenge. That said, a few minutes in, my fingers started going numb from the cold, but we were moving pretty quick and I hadn't broken a sweat, so I pushed on.
We are starting our walk, going up Cradle Mountain. That echoes like crazy. So there's a tunnel behind me. That was, I don't know how the audio will pick up on my phone, but the echo, that is like kind of insane. That's sick.
About 20 minutes into the walk, we hit a pretty steep incline, and the track changed from very easy, very walkable planks to what I could only describe as an overgrown rocky jungle. This was where I started to really heat up, and from this point on, I didn't really think about the cold for the rest of the hike. This incline brought us from the Dove Lake to Lake Wilkes. A bit sweaty, we took our first rest stop here and washed our faces in the icy mountain water. It was the most exhilarating face wash of my life. We then took the Lake Wilkes track up a bit further, traversing more rocky terrain to get up to the face track that eventually took us to the base of the mountain. Along the way, I kept looking back at Dove Lake where we'd started the walk, and we just kept getting higher and higher and higher. It was pretty awesome. They say that it's about the journey, not the destination. Well, in the case of Cradle Mountain, it is a bit of both. We took the hard route up, but it was about to get 10 times harder. In preparation for this hike, I'd spoken to a few people who'd done it or attempted it, and they all said the same thing. They told us, it's tougher than you would think. So naturally, we thought it would be pretty easy, but it wasn't.
We are about 60% up Cradle Mountain. That is kind of where we come from. And this is what we still have to go. Far out, man. Where else can you get this? That's beautiful.
The higher we got up the mountain, the steeper the incline became, the more rocky the path became, and the further away the peak seemed to grow. Nonetheless, we pushed on. We had to be back by 4 p.m. at the visitor center for the final bus that would take us back to the hotel. So we only stopped briefly a few times on the way up to catch our breath. This is one of those times.
I'm safe. Always hold on with 3 points of contact.
With renewed appreciation for my own mortality, and significantly greater respect for the mountain's discretion to throw me off, I continued much more carefully up towards the peak. Clouds moved around us, sometimes partially obscuring the path ahead, but never too much that we would have to stop and wait.
So we're still not at the top, and we've just had a massive cloud come through. So we're still going to try and make it, but if you're seeing this footage and it's not on my Patreon, something might have happened. Anyway, love to my friends and family. Mwah. So we got a bit more of the clouds coming in. That's the trail we've just walked through, which is pretty much rocks, not so much of a trail. And this beautiful wall behind me is what we're about to go up. So I think there's a little marker over there. Morale is high. This will be fun. Just went up the hill. As I was going up, the clouds did a very kind thing and dissipated a little bit. So we are now going to go up that way. Still not at the top. Still not at the top, but holy bro. Got that much to go. Not much at all. How beautiful is that? Where else, man? Where else can you get this? We have officially made it to the top. It is something around 6, 7, 8 degrees. And we survived the way up at least. So
828 meters.
The way down is a bit of a journey. So we'll see how that goes. But what was that, 800 something meters elevation?
Yeah.
Pretty happy. Pretty surreal. And it's pretty quiet as well. I mean, besides the ruckus we're making, of course. But 10 out of 10 would recommend if you're able. It's pretty awesome.
In celebration and feeling a bit overheated by the intensity of the rock climbing, I did take off my shirt. We had the top of the mountain to ourselves and we appreciated the view for half an hour. I had brought my Tauros Pokemon card with me, and in doing so, I set the record for the highest altitude Pokemon card ever taken in Tasmania. We were again so lucky with the weather. The clouds were staying pretty clear the whole time that we sat at the top and even on the way down. As we eventually descended, I found the path getting even more treacherous. We decided to space ourselves out so that if any loose rocks were dislodged, they'd be less likely to fall on one of us below. I also discovered at the top of the mountain that I somehow had phone signal. So I popped in my AirPods and I actually called Rachel for that first section and I gave her a live recap of what I was experiencing. After we got down to the base of the mountain, it was now a race against time to get back to the bus. It was a race that we were comfortably ahead of schedule, so I had the bright idea to take the longer way back and make the most out of the trip. We originally planned to come back via Marian's lookout track, but I suggested that instead we go via Cradle Lake, then Wombat Pool, pass by Lake Lilla, so that we could see more lakes. The boys agreed, so we quickly marched on, and when we were only 20 minutes walk from the visitor center, we passed a British couple standing on the edge of the lake. I said g'day, and they told us that they were going into the lake. I told them that they were crazy. So we sat nearby for a breather, and they ended up only going in just to their shins. I then goaded them, and I said, well, you can't go in halfway. After a bit more discussion, I inevitably had to prove that a half job is not good enough, and that you just need to dive in with full commitment. It was incredibly shallow, so no diving actually occurred, but I did wade in just deep enough to float, and you bet that I proved my point. It was a great experience, but certainly not my finest moment.
Whoa! All right. Woo! That is done. Well played. Very well played.
I'm gonna do like a 3-hour update. Hopefully I don't die. Okay, let's go.
We ended up catching the bus in time, and I jumped in a hot shower as soon as we got home. This is me after the Cradle Mountain hike. We have had a very good day. It was fun. I had a great time. We were all starved, having only packed just a bunch of muesli bars and not had a proper lunch despite the nearly 8-hour intense trek. We bumped into a little friend on the way to an early dinner, and then I had a much needed carb refuel commonly known as pizza. As a very special surprise, without any planning, I somehow bumped into one of the best vertical directors Australia has to offer, and so we had a wonderful chat. What a crazy place to run into a good friend. The next morning was even colder than the previous day, despite rugging up in several layers above thermals. We saw some frost that almost looked like snow, and it gave the bush a sprinkling of winter wonderland. With checkout at 10 a.m., we waited for the frost to clear off the road, melted by the morning sun, then we headed off to Launceston for the next stage of the trip. Launceston was originally an in-between stop on the way to Freycinet, but we arrived pretty early, as it's only an hour or so drive from the mountain. One of the boys was keen to check out a nearby suspension bridge, and so we walked to Cataract Gorge, which was conveniently pretty close to the Penny Royal, which was where we were staying just that night. Now, I thought we were just looking at a bridge. Pretty boring, but I wanted to support my mate's special interest. And I am so glad that I did, because it was such a beautiful view walking there, and also from the chairlift that's suspended across the reserve. After coming off the chairlift, we spoke to a very kind lady on reception, and she recommended an easy walk we could do nearby. We had mentioned to her that we'd just been up Cradle Mountain the previous day, so we were all feeling a bit sore and not keen for anything too long. We went up the gorge a little bit, saw some nice sights. It was a little steep at times, but pretty much a chill walk. After about 20 minutes, we reached an old hydro power station, which is where the lady on reception had told us to turn back and go back the way that we'd came. This power station had a cool history. It had been demolished by a flood and been rebuilt, before then being decommissioned a couple of decades ago. It was here that I had the bright idea to go back on the other side of the gorge, rather than turning back and going back the way we came. I remember saying, "How bad could it be? We're only here once." It was brutal. Still 100 times easier than Cradle Mountain, but if you add in the soreness in our legs, it was nearly comparable. About 20 minutes of stairs later, we hit the top of the path and it was all downhill from there, relatively easy. We saw a few paddy melons just beside the track. They're like a mix of quokka and a kangaroo, and they are very cute. It was a journey getting back to the hotel, and we immediately hit up the shops for some food. The rest of the day and evening was for rest, with a short walk to pick up some Domino's pizza at some point. The next day, I met with another Rachel, a Tasmanian film producer looking to enter the vertical drama space. She's done a few mini verticals on her TikTok page, Koala Reels, but wanted more info, so she reached out to me a month or so ago, and it was just convenient that I was passing through her area. We had a great chat, lovely coffee, and then I was off again to Freycinet. Before we left Launceston, one of the boys I was traveling with had a notification from Lifeblood, as they are a regular donator. This prompted us to start chatting between ourselves, and a few minutes later, I'd booked myself in for my first ever donation. Small trigger warning, I am about to show myself hooked up to the machine, and there will be a little bit of blood visible. It was a pretty cool experience. I ended up donating plasma because I had been in Canada within a month of my donation, and recent travel increases disease risk factors that you can carry within your blood. I had a squishy stress ball they gave me, and they processed 749 milliliters of my plasma across about 45 minutes of me sitting in the chair. The staff was super kind and friendly, and I even got a free milkshake and later a coffee. I highly recommend it if you're able. There were some crazy statistics that I read that showed just how valuable this kind of thing is, and I'm sure to be back sometime soon. A hop, skip, and a 2-hour drive later, we arrived in Freycinet. Myself and the boys had planned this Airbnb with beach views as a surreal, low-key final 2 nights of the trip to wind down and just relax. On the way there, life had other plans, as I got asked to join a callback session for an upcoming vertical filming in Melbourne. This is quite rare, as normally you audition first, then get asked to do a callback. I must have not been on the list for the auditions initially, but discovered by the casting director later, so she kindly scheduled me in for a live video audition the very next day. When we arrived at the Airbnb, the view was breathtaking, just beautiful. The house was split into a sleeping area and a chill area with the kitchen. There was a full wall glass window overlooking the ocean, and I just could not believe, I still can't believe it, how stunning that view was. Of course, no place in Tasmania is complete without a fireplace, so we threw some logs in there and got the living room heated pretty toasty. The next morning, I encouraged the boys to join me in the ocean, so we all walked down together and had a nice bonding experience in the icy waters.
I am currently standing in the Tasmanian Ocean. It is somewhere around like 10 degrees, which is honestly pretty warm for what it could be. But yeah, we all just kind of went in together. So we did like a group shot of that I'll probably edit in at some point. And what a color. That is probably the most beautiful horizon I have ever seen. I don't know, man. Tasmania has it's left me pretty speechless. Look at that. And then we got the mountains off to the side as well. I don't know. I don't know why Tasmanian tourism just hasn't jumped on my radar. It's literally in my backyard. And it took me 24 years to get here. So, I mean, look at that. I have no words. No words. All right, I'm gonna go get dry before I freeze. But anyway, love you. Bye.
Later in the afternoon, I did the callback. I was pretty happy with it, and they must have been happy too, because I am booked and flying out to Melbourne in a couple days to shoot the project. Nothing much else happened while we were there. We just chilled out the rest of the final night and made our way back down to Hobart for our flight. The final day in Tassie, we drove up to Mount Wellington and saw some pretty spectacular views. In good weather, the drive is pretty easy, and the views are well worth it, so if you're not able to hike it all the way up Cradle Mountain, absolutely recommend it. We finished with a massive burger on an Eat Club deal and went to the airport. After checking in our bags, I saw another Eat Club deal in the airport for a bar, which coincidentally also stocked the Lark whiskey, which, if you remember from the beginning of the vlog, that's the local distillery we planned to visit, but unfortunately didn't get around to doing a full tasting. So, you bet, I hopped on yet another deal and got us a whiskey tasting flight of the 3 basic Lark whiskies, which is Classic, Firetrail, and Devil's Storm. And then there was another one that one of my mates chose that was more of a smoky maple bourbon. I really enjoyed the Devil's Storm, so I had to get myself a bottle to take home as a bit of a souvenir to share with some friends in Sydney that appreciate a good whiskey.
That just about wraps up my trip. So huge thank you to Susanna and Anastasia for the coffee frappuccino with freshly whipped cream. And thank you very much to Kim as well for the skim cappuccino. You're all legends. You're the reasons that I get to do this vlog. So thank you very much. I hope I didn't drone on too long. And I'm very sorry again that I had to cut off part 2, but I hope it was worth the wait. And I look forward to chatting more with you in the comments about it.
I'll see you next time with updates from my trip to Melbourne.